Hey, with your evening story channel, I post new interesting stories every day. Subscribe and click the bell to not miss it. Adriana sat down on a bench outside the house, wrapped her hands around her face and thought, but she was not allowed to be alone with herself. Hi, why are you looking so sad with your head tilted to the side and squinting her eyes against the bright sun? Adriana replied, and don't you get sick. I've been doing all the chores around the house. I thought I'd take a little break. You must think I'm sad. I'm just tired. As I sat down next to you, a neighbor furtively asked me if I saw Stephen stopping by your house with his tractor. So are you in relationship with him or something? Adriana furrowed her eyebrows and muttered menacingly, You've got a big mouth. Betty, all day long you want to use it. And then you get offended when people call you a gossip, and you'll get your hair pulled out for asking such indiscreet questions. Betty didn't seem to like her sarcasm. Yeah, well, at least you're clean. What's your family like? 4 kids growing up without a father. Who do you think will be the most gossiped about? Adriana did not have time to answer this question, though she was ready to teach a lesson to the stubborn and insolent neighbor. Another woman approached them. Why are you gossiping? Get out of here and don't look at me like that. I'm not a painting. I'm used to collecting gossip. Do people believe you're telling the truth? Come on, Adriana, let's go inside. I need to consult with you. Betty's neighbor was in an unenviable position, and she had to leave to avoid further anger. As she sat down on a chair in the kitchen, the woman came in and said, You see, Adriana, my parasite has been sneaking money out of the house. I thought that I had stashed my paycheck somewhere and forgot. But no, I double-checked everything. And recently, our accountant from the department saw my Michael standing outside the store with his buddies, pulling from a jar. I knew he'd snap again, like he was possessed. Give me a hint, Adriana. I'm sorry to bring that up, but your ex-husband was no angel either. Adriana leaned sideways on the kitchen table and thoughtfully replied, Yes, I had a hard time with him, until he ran away. I used to look all over the village for him too, until I found him in the grass somewhere barely alive. I'm glad he's gone. At least I'm at peace now. The children help me with the chores. I hope we won't be lost. What about your Michael? Take him to our blacksmith shop. He's an experienced man. He should be able to help. Thanking Adriana for her advice, the neighbor said goodbye and left her house. At that moment, she saw Betty's figure flashing through the window again. So it was that curiosity kept her on her toes. Casting her eyes around the kitchen, Adriana put first the pot of borscht on the stove and then the kettle. When she heard voices from the vegetable garden, she opened the sashes of the window and shouted, Hey workers, I've had enough of watering the beds with a hose. Let's go home. Now we'll have dinner. Their mother's words had an effect on them like a magnet, and in a couple of minutes all 4 of them were in the kitchen. Despite his age, the youngest child, who was only 5 years old, also helped as he could, washed his hands. And seated at the table, the children began to gorge themselves with appetite on the rich borscht. Looking at her treasures, Adriana sighed and smiling, said, I don't know what I would do without you. I would probably die of homesickness. Hearing the last words, the children squealed unhappily. Come on, I'm just kidding. Of course your mom will live forever. That's a very healthy optimism. But at the same time, Adriana never told anyone about how hard it was to raise 4 children, not in terms of money, although even here everything was not so rosy, but in the sense that a lot of effort and nerves are spent on always maintaining a comfortable standard of living. While working on the farm, Adriana often accepted part-time jobs on the road. On such days, one had to work until the evening. The local head of the village made arrangements with other settlements where farm laborers were needed. Naturally, he received most of the money from such business trips, but he did not disrespect his own workers either. During this time, the children got used to the fact that their mother could be away from home all day, so they learned to cook. True, the simplest dishes washed by hand in a basin. and also to look after the vegetable garden. So Adriana wasn't afraid that the children would go hungry. She knew that they were economical and could put any city dweller under her belt. After dinner, the children began to get ready for bed, but with their mother's permission, they sat down to watch cartoons. While she washed the dishes, they giggled at the interesting moments in the plots. Listening to their ringing laughter, Adriana thanked fate again and again for giving her such beautiful children. Yes, her ex-husband had a certain role in this, but he did not find it necessary to be involved in their upbringing. Well, that was his choice, and Adriana didn't judge. He just one day secretly packed all his things and went far away like the wind in the field. At the same time, she prayed to God that none of her children would inherit their father's legacy. The cartoons ended and the children went to their rooms. She had a nice house. She'd inherited it from her parents. Besides the large kitchen and hall, it had 3 rooms, 2 of which Adriana had converted into children's rooms while doing the dishes. She went up and kissed each of the children in turn. Those responded in kind and said good night to each other. Stepping out onto the porch, Adriana filled the dog's bowl with food and set it by the porch. The dog reacted instantly and came running over to eat. "Are you the best guardian we have?" patting him on the withers. Adriana was thinking about something of her own. Sadly tilting her head to the side, suddenly footsteps were heard outside the gate. The dog shrieked and dropped the treat in a flash. Sniffing, he walked over to the fence and began to whimper softly. What could that mean? And who had suddenly come at this late hour? Adriana suddenly thought it was the neighbor Betty galloping again, and to make sure, she shouted her name. But in response, only silence and continued shuffling near the fence in utter bewilderment at who had come to visit. Adriana nevertheless ventured to open the wicket. With a shiver in her hands, she pulled the metal bolt and the door opened. Venya wanted to jump out, but Adriana pushed him away. In the darkness, it was hard to see who was standing in front of her. Then she turned on another light bulb just above the fence. The bright light illuminated the face of the uninvited guest. In front of her stood an old man, and in his hands he had a rag roll. True, as soon as the grandfather corrected his hand, apparently lethargized, what lay inside this curl suddenly stirred. Without remembering herself, Adriana let the old man in, as if fate itself told her to do so, stepping over the threshold of the wicket. Grandfather bowed almost at his feet and said, "Let the good woman stay for the night. I have nowhere to go." Crossing her arms in front of her, Adriana looked at Venya and quietly replied, "Yes, of course, come inside. My children are already asleep, so we'll talk in whispers." The old man nodded and walked shufflingly into the kitchen. There he sat down on a chair and finally unwrapped the package. "I'm sorry to drop in on you so suddenly, but I really don't have anywhere to go. My house burned down when my neighbor's barn went up in flames. My daughter wouldn't let me stay with her, so I've been staying with strangers. Who's going to let me sleep here? I've been wandering for 2 weeks now," as a homeless man cried. The old man opened the top of the blanket and showed me that he had found her with him. "The poor child is suffering. I'm sorry to give it to the orphanage." Adriana also cried with him, but immediately covered her mouth. "I'm sorry, I'm just getting emotional. I'm raising 4 kids on my own, and I've never dreamed of it. I can't imagine someone taking them away." The old man got up from the table and walked over to her. "You are a very courageous woman. It's just a pity that you don't have a strong male shoulder beside you. I, too, lifted my little girl alone until she grew up and jumped out of the nest. I thought she wouldn't leave her father. I guess I was wrong, jumping up like doused with cold water. Adriana said, 'Give me your baby. I'll examine him now and feed him, and you can make sandwiches and tea. Of course, we have already had dinner, but you are from the road. You need to eat too.'" The old man was not shy and began to manage the kitchen himself. What a stamina! Adriana didn't even ask where the guest was from or why he had a child in his arms. She simply did what her heart told her to do and decided to examine the infant first. The girl was about 2 months old, but not to say that she looked bad in any way. Most likely her mother had been feeding her child poorly. But then what happened? That remained in question. As if feeling the touch of a woman's hands, the girl woke up and began to cry. The old man was rushing to check on the child. But Adriana gestured that everything was all right. She swallowed the baby and then took milk out of the refrigerator and told her grandfather to warm it up. Even though her kids aren't little nipples and bottles at home anymore, she still had some left over, so they came in handy, as if she knew she would have to use them. A little while later, the old man brought cold milk. "I'd feed you myself, mistress. I'm exhausted from wandering." Adriana understood and poured the milk into the bottle herself. "Go and have your supper. I'll join you in a moment. You and I have a lot to talk about." The old man bowed his head and disappeared behind a makeshift curtain. I could hear him stirring the sugar in the cup, careful not to make any noise. After feeding the baby, Adriana rocked her and laid her on the couch. In the kitchen, she sat down next to the grandfather and first of all asked, "How did you manage to stay alone with a baby in your arms?" The old man shivered a little in his chair, then took a deep breath and answered, "So this is my granddaughter." At first, everything was normal, and Kathy was engaged in her upbringing. But then it was like someone took over. She became irritable about everything, snapped at me if she lost her temper. Basically, she was possessed. I don't see any other way. And one day, Kathy decided to give the child to an orphanage. I, of course, resisted, but then there was a fire, and there were so many problems that it was no time for the baby. After taking a breath, the old man continued, "I ran to various authorities with a request to help with housing, but no one wants to do it. I ended up homeless, as if I didn't even have my own corner. I thought that my daughter would take me in. But no, she only turned on me even more. Good thing a friend let me into his house for a while. But then I had to leave him too. And one day I came to my daughter again, and her child in the yard on the bench. It seemed strange to me. And then I saw in the window, God forbid, how she was tumbling with that tramp. Adriana put a bowl of borscht in front of him. She forgot there was any left. We didn't eat it. What happened next? How did you end up on the street?" The old man took a spoonful of rich soup and, having tasted it, smiled and said that you are a real hostess, not like my daughter. So I grabbed the little girl and left the yard. It seemed to me that she wanted to get rid of her. I could think of nothing else but to leave the village for good, so as not to be seen. Maybe they're already looking for the girl. I haven't watched the news in a while, shaking my head. Adriana answered, "No, it's quiet. If there was anything, my neighbors would have told me by now. By the way, where's that village? Where did you escape from?" The old man ate some more borscht and answered that it's 30 kilometers away from here. It's called Desiatkovo, but I'm not going back there. Let them do whatever they want to me. But I won't give my granddaughter to anyone. The grandfather cried again, and Adriana handed him a handkerchief. "Here, wipe your face. It's all wet and red from crying." After the old man had finished his borscht, Adriana washed the dishes and pointed to the sofa in the hall and said, "Lie down here and I'll stay with your granddaughter. And don't worry, nothing will happen to her. Tomorrow morning we will think what to do next. But it seems to me that we should visit your daughter and strictly ask her for leaving the child in danger." Grandfather nodded in agreement. "All right, Adriana. What do you say? I just want to make sure that the girl is all right. She doesn't even have any papers on her. And Kathy hasn't even come up with a name." The next day, Adriana woke up earlier than usual and immediately prepared breakfast. She didn't wake up the children, but she did wake up the old man. "Get up, it's time to get ready for the trip. By the way, you didn't say your name either, and it's probably because of excitement." The old man spread his hands and whispered, "Sorry, daughter. My name is Ethan. You could just call me Grandpa Ethan." How would you feel comfortable given that he was a stranger to her? Adriana decided on the first option. After having breakfast, they started to get ready to go. "Ethan, we'll take the girl with us, in case your daughter has maternal feelings. And here's the thing. I still don't get it. Who was that asshole you saw in the window the other day? The old man sat down on the chair as if on a path. That's kind of the dad. I've only seen him twice, though. Kathy never told me anything about her love life. I wasn't really interested. She's a woman of age. She knows who to date and who to avoid. Adriana understood and helped her grandfather pack the baby. Now I'll run to my neighbor. He has a car. He'll get us there quickly. Soon they loaded into the car and went to the address of the old man's daughter. It was obvious that the grandfather was very worried. But it is understandable because it is not known what awaits him there. And Adriana herself was visibly worried, thinking about how the mother could do such a thing to the child. Why was she so cynical, or had her soul grown stale? They were a little shaken up on the road, but surprisingly the girl did not even cry. She slept peacefully in her grandfather's arms. As they pulled up outside the house they wanted, the driver turned at Adriana and said, "I'll wait for you here. But if anything happens, yell right away." Nodding to him, she got out of the car, followed by the old man, and only they approached the gate. A shiny-haired woman jumped out. Not only that, and after a moment, a man showed up as well. Seeing him, Adriana almost fainted. It was her ex-husband, whom she had already forgotten about. Adriana glared at him and asked him threateningly, "It was not enough for you to have 4 children. So you decided to breed more?" Men grinned and wanted to show who was the master of the house. But then the driver came up to him, so he stepped aside and didn't take another step. "Otherwise, I'll beat you so badly that you'll remember it for a long time." He obediently retreated, and Adriana turned to the old man and almost in tears asked him, "Is this your daughter? She looks like a bum, Ethan. Let's leave, and don't give the child to her." Soon this case became known to the guardianship authorities, although, in fact, they should have initially controlled everything. It's their fault. But God is their judge. Adriana told her grandfather how to terminate Kathy's parental rights. After gathering all the necessary documents, Ethan did just that, especially since he didn't want to give up the baby himself. Surprisingly, Adriana also offered to take the child to her for upbringing. Was she scared when she found out whose daughter it was? "No, Ethan can't bear my heart. If the girl stays even for a day with that fallen woman." The decision was made, and Adriana filed for custody. As she said later, where there are 4 children, there's no shortage of fifths. "I'll raise them all. The main thing would be health and strength, the rest will come." The children, Adriana, with great joy and warmth, met the unexpected addition to the family. They promised to take care and watch over their little sister. Ethan agreed to stay with the friendly family and is now settling in the 3rd available room. Meanwhile, Kathy was awaiting trial. Adriana's ex-husband was also facing the same fate. They will both answer for abandoning the child and did not even think that it would safely decide his fate.